Alright guys, our first set of questions come from Lundrick, and he said, what was the first wrestling pay-per-view you ever saw? The first pay-per-view I ever saw, I ordered it, well, had my parents order it. The first pay-per-view I ordered was SummerSlam 2003. Yeah, SummerSlam 2003. Sure, the pay-per-view isn't all that great, and honestly, it really isn't. You had a few good undercard matches, maybe like one, and both main events, in my opinion, were pretty good actually. Brock and Kurt had a great match. It didn't quite live up to the WrestleMania rematch, in my opinion. That's their best encounter, even over their Iron Man match. But I think SummerSlam's probably their worst, and the roles were reversed. Brock was the heel, Kurt was the face. I think I liked it better when Brock was the face. Still a good match though. And the Elimination Chamber match, even though Triple H burying Goldberg kind of sucks, I still liked the match. I mean, you had great in-ring stuff between Michaels, Jericho, and Orton, and Kevin Nash. He kind of did his thing there. But Goldberg coming in and raising hell and basically destroying everyone was absolutely awesome. And sure, he was just about to destroy Triple H, and then bam, Triple H kind of buries Goldberg with a sledgehammer shot to the head. But I still like the match. I still think it's good. Best chamber ever? Probably not. Probably not even top 5. Barely scratches top 10. But still a good match regardless. Then he asked, what is the most underrated pay-per-view ever? In my most humble opinion, the most underrated pay-per-view ever was the pay-per-view that happened right after SummerSlam 2003, and that's Unforgiven 2003. No one ever talks about this pay-per-view, and maybe it's because no one likes it. Because honestly, I don't like it. I've seen some people give it positive reviews, but I really like this pay-per-view. In my opinion, you had at least 4-star matches on here. One in the triple threat match between Chris Jericho, Christian, and Rob Van Dam. That was an excellent triple threat for the Intercontinental title. The underrated gem between Shawn Michaels and Randy Orton was absolutely awesome. And the last man standing match between Kane and Shane McMahon. And I know from a realistic standpoint, it's kind of stupid how the boss's son can go toe-to-toe with Kane, who at this point has been unmasked and is just on a rampage, destroying everyone in sight, and destroyed Rob Van Dam at SummerSlam 2003. But I really liked the pay-per-view, and I really liked the last man standing match. I thought that was the best match on the show. And the spot where Shane dives off the stage was absolutely awesome, and for me that blew my mind when I was younger. And I went to the Raw after this pay-per-view, so it kind of gets bonus points for me just because I was there the day after the pay-per-view. So overall, I think it's really cool. If you could change the main event of any WrestleMania, what would it be, and why? Now, here's where it gets interesting. I know a lot of people say the one they would change is WrestleMania 8, because you could have had Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair in the main event. And yeah, that would have been an awesome main event and probably make WrestleMania 8 one of the greatest WrestleManias ever. But I would have kept WrestleMania 8 the way it was. I liked the matches on there. Another WrestleMania that I considered was WrestleMania 29, this year's. I was fine with Rock and Cena too. However, I thought the main event should have been John Cena versus The Rock versus CM Punk in a triple threat match. I thought that would have been a great main event and would have been interesting to see. And John Cena could have gone over and I would have been fine with it. I'm just saying I really thought CM Punk deserved to be in the main event. And if you wanted to be a one-on-one, why not have CM Punk and John Cena? They can tear the house down at a house show. So, in my opinion, that would be a great WrestleMania main event, just out of the blue. But I'm getting off track. The one WrestleMania main event I would change is without a doubt John Cena versus The Miz at WrestleMania 27. Now, obviously, I don't really like WrestleMania 27 all that much. It's not the worst WrestleMania ever, but I certainly don't like it. The problem I had with this main event is the in-ring action was, okay, but, all this match was build-up. Miz was the third wheel, and not in a good way. He was the third wheel as the WWE champion. It was just basically to build up Rock and Cena at the next WrestleMania. That's all this match was about. And let's not forget that this match almost had a double countout. Countout victories are stupid at WrestleMania in general, but you're going to do a double countout in your main event at WrestleMania. Don't ever tease a double countout at WrestleMania. I know I'm not a creative I'm not a member of the creative team. I don't really know a lot about, like, booking matches and all that, but I know enough not to do a double countout at WrestleMania, especially in the main event. And then The Rock coming out and basically overthrowing, the anonymous GM. That, spoiler alert, it's Hornswoggle. And then he rock bottoms John Cena, and The Miz gets the WWE champion does not beat uh, his challenger clean. Yes, that also happened. And let's not forget that even though The Rock had not wrestled since WrestleMania 20, he got back into the ring for the first time at Survivor Series of this year, came back and beat up Miz. So someone who hadn't wrestled in 7 years can just come in and beat up the company's champion. It just made everyone look stupid, in my opinion. It was just a stupid main event. It's like, at that point, why not have Triple H and Undertaker go on last? Like, you think they couldn't, beat one rock bottom? Stupid, for like, just a stupid main event. I don't know if, like, I would think I would change the contestants completely. I might have John Cena in the main event, but I don't think Miz was ready. And as you can see, Miz hasn't gotten any further. He's the host of SummerSlam this year. So it's I don't think Miz was ready for the WWE title. I'll tell you what, I'm probably gonna make a, like, mock WrestleMania 27 card, like what I would do instead, and probably put it in the description box. That's probably what I'll do, or I might just show it on the screen right now. But that's probably what I would do, is just take Miz out of the match completely and have it be John Cena versus someone, or I might just have two different guys in the main event. But yeah, I think that was just a stupid main event at WrestleMania. I don't think it ever should have happened, and yeah, pretty stupid. The Wrestling Crisis asks, what is your favorite WWE pay-per-view? Without a doubt, in my opinion, the best pay-per-view ever, SummerSlam 2002. Not one match was horrible, or bad, or mediocre, or okay. Everything was at least good. When your worst match is Undertaker versus Test, you got a pretty good show on your hands. When Jericho versus Flair is your second match on the card, you got a pretty good show on your hands. When you got two main events that are absolutely awesome, you know your show's going to be good. Shawn Michaels and Triple H was probably one of the best SummerSlam matches ever. It's in the top 5 for sure. And of course, this was supposed to be a one-time thing for HBK, but then he basically started a second career after this match. This match just proved that even though he had been gone for 4 years, he could still go and act like he had never missed a day, cowboy boots and all. Other great matches like Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, probably one of the best openers I had ever seen. I know a lot of people say that Triple H and Mankind and the cage match is probably the best opener in SummerSlam. I don't know, maybe, but I think I might give the nod to this one. Maybe it's just my favoritism showing, but honestly, that's just how I think of it. RVD and Chris Benoit had a great match for the Intercontinental title. The tag title match with the Un-Americans and Booker T and Lance Storm was absolutely cool. Edge and Eddie Guerrero was really, really, really good. I think it was a good match with Eddie working over Edge's shoulder, and there was a spot where Eddie did the 5-star frog splash and landed right on Edge's shoulder, and it looked absolutely brutal. Just the way, I guess it was just the talent of both guys making that spot look really, really brutal. And of course, the main event, Rock putting Brock over clean, and Brock Lesnar became the guy for, the year and a half he was there. So, a great pay-per-view, in my opinion, the best pay-per-view ever. It beats every WrestleMania, in my opinion. Just absolutely awesome. Favorite Jericho match? Without a doubt, Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels. Again, I think it's his best one, so his best one's my favorite. WrestleMania 19 is my favorite WrestleMania, so obviously there's going to be some favoritism shown in there as well. I believe WrestleMania 19 is the best WrestleMania ever, and this was the match that made it the best WrestleMania ever. They had the best match on the card, and when they beat Rock and Austin 3, and when they beat Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar, you know you had one hell of a match, and this match was absolutely awesome. I loved Chris Jericho mimicking Shawn Michaels. I love the story behind it, just Jericho trying to think he's better than his idol, and the ending to the match is absolutely awesome. I know people don't like the roll-up victory, but I was fine with it, because I could just see Jericho kick Michaels right in the nuts, which was the highlight of the match, by far. Favorite Jericho feud? I would say his feud with Chris Benoit. I feel like Chris Benoit was his best opponent. He might have had his best matches with Shawn Michaels, but he and Chris Benoit constantly put on excellent matches no matter where they were in their career. They had great matches in WWE, and in my opinion, their best match in WWE was the ladder match from Royal Rumble 2001, but they also had a great match in Japan in the Super J Cup in 1995. And that match, of course, not a lot of people have seen it because it's a Japan match, but if you haven't seen it, you got to try and find it. I'm sure it's on like, YouTube or maybe Dailymotion or just somewhere on the internet. It's a great match. In my opinion, it's 5 stars, but I'm sure some people might not tread in that territory. But in my opinion, it's absolutely awesome, a great match, and Chris Benoit and Jericho fused together so well. They had, very similar like styles and wrestling ability. They had a similar background, just a similar rise to the top. So definitely Jericho's best feud was with Chris Benoit, and basically I would say it's his best opponent. Even though his best match was probably with Shawn Michaels, I think his best opponent is Chris Benoit. Denise Bell 87 asked, underrated Jericho match or feud? I'll answer both. Underrated Jericho match, without a doubt. Jericho versus Juventud Guerrera at Super Brawl 8 in 1998. This match was awesome. In my opinion, one of the best matches to ever take place at Super Brawl. My rating might be a little high. 4 3/4. Yes, I said 4 3/4. Some people might be thinking that's too high. You know what? You're probably right. I'm probably overrating this match. But you know what? I don't care. I don't think people give it enough credit. People don't talk about it. Absolutely amazing match. Absolutely awesome. Jericho's whole work in WCW is just, I don't want to say it's, I would say it is underrated, but underrated with a cause, because most people just haven't seen his WCW work just from a lack of not watching WCW or just, being too young, stuff like that. Underrated Jericho feud, probably his feud with Triple H in 2000. I mean, sure, it was kind of on and off, but it didn't spark a lot of pay-per-view matches, but he had a nice feud with Jericho with Stephanie. I think that would be the better option, because let's face it, when Jericho got in the ring with Triple H, it was basically Triple H fighting for Stephanie. That's essentially what he was doing most of the time. Sure, they had their differences later down the road, but Jericho's feud with Stephanie is really what put him over the top. It's really what got him over. Sure, his feud with China has got his foot in the door, but it was really with Stephanie that made him, made him stand out. People took notice to him, and it gave him, great one-liners, great moments, smashing the pie, can't talk today, in Stephanie's face. That was pretty awesome. We got great, bargain basement slut, dirty, filthy, disgusting, brutal, bottom peeking, trash bag hoe. We got great one-liners from Chris Jericho. So yes, great feud, underrated feud, because just because it wasn't with a wrestler does not mean it was a great feud. These next 2 questions come from Brent Young, and he said, what is your favorite big man versus big man match from WWE? Without a doubt, Kane and The Undertaker from WrestleMania 14. Great match, and, again, if we'll go quality first. Quality is great, both guys really, I think this is Kane's best match ever, and at the time, Kane was not a good worker previous to the Kane gimmick, when he was, Isaac Yankem, the crazy dental hygienist. He was fake Diesel. He had a bunch of other weird gimmicks, but this one, Kane, really saved his career, and he became a good worker too. And Undertaker really did help, because, Undertaker at this point, 1998, he has now stepped up his game. It wasn't until 1996 where Taker really started to bust out great matches. So both guys worked well together, and Undertaker is always good in big man situations. So he really made Kane look like $1 million here. Obviously, Undertaker won because it's WrestleMania, but both guys really look strong. And Kane, I think, again, my history isn't the brightest, but I'm pretty sure Kane was like the first one to kick out of 2 tombstones. It took 3 tombstones to beat Kane. So that did make Kane look really strong. Even though he lost, Kane still looked really good in this match. The story is really the shining point, and Kane made arguably one of the greatest debuts ever. There are very few debuts, in my opinion, that could top it, but he made an impact, broke the cell open, tombstone The Undertaker, and again, it was someone as big as The Undertaker. You think, oh, it's his younger brother, but he was a real threat, and Kane was scary. When I was younger and I looked, I had to deal with the unmasked Kane. I thought that was holy crap, this is scary, but for a young kid back then, Kane must have been the scariest thing in the world. And Kane looked unbeatable. Of course, again, Undertaker beat him, but still, great match from both guys, and the story is really what made the match great. And again, if you're one of those people who, if the quality isn't good, the match is terrible, you still got a good match here. So either way, you can't go wrong. Second question was your favorite hardcore match. I'm thinking I'm going to have to go Randy Orton and Mick Foley from Backlash 2004, mainly because I knew what a hardcore match was at this point. Again, I'm still very young in 2004, not like both as a wrestling fan and just as a human being. I was probably like in first grade when this match happened. So to me, I had never seen something like this, like something so like bloody and gruesome. This blew my mind. I didn't know a match could be so devastating to both guys. There were 6 spots in this match. They both bled really bad, and then there was the spot where Foley did the elbow drop off the stage, and then Orton did the RKO onto the barbed wire bat, and that was again like insane. This match blew my mind. I knew hardcore matches you could use weapons, but I was not aware of how gruesome it could be. So this match again just totally wowed me when I was younger. And of course, there are some other great hardcore matches, but I'll always give the nod to this one, mainly because of the rush of nostalgia that I get from it. So yeah. These next set of questions come from Diesel101 Raw, and he said, your number one dream match for Chris Jericho. Tough one for me, but I'm going to go with Owen Hart as Chris Jericho's dream match opponent, mainly because, one, I think Owen is equal to or better in the ring than Bret. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying anything. I also like Owen more than Bret. Again, I'm not knocking Bret. Bret's awesome, but I always liked Owen more. But another thing Owen had more than Bret was mic skills. And because Chris Jericho is so great on the mic too, I feel like leading up to the match, you could have great promos in between the two. Both guys, come from a similar background. Jericho was trained in the Hart Dungeon, so they know each other very well, and their styles are very similar too. So Chris Jericho and Owen Hart, I feel like would have an excellent match together. Again, similar styles, similar movesets. So yes, both of them, great match. Your favorite year for Chris Jericho? Ugh, God, that's gonna be tough. But I have an answer. I have 2 answers. If I had to do whole package, 2000, I think was my favorite year of Chris Jericho, just because he really started getting it in the WWE. He really started to have great matches, cut great promos. He gave us so many great one-liners. That's when his, feud with like Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, Chris Benoit, that's when the whole thing was. He was busting out great matches with Benoit. But if you take wrestling out of the picture, I think another favorite year of mine is 1998. Chris Jericho also had great matches in 1998, but that is when he got like completely over as a heel in WCW. He was just the whiny heel, but he just did so many ridiculous things that made him such a great character. You had a man of 1,004 holds, the conspiracy victim thing when Dean Malenko beat him in that battle royal, and then he went to Washington, D.C. to just talk about the conspiracies. The whole Goldberg thing, where he was challenging Goldberg and was Jericho 5, Greenberg 0, whatever the score was. So Jericho really was just saying random stuff, doing random things, just to, entertain himself, but he was entertaining everyone else. And fortunately, Jericho left WCW to come to WWE, where he became a real star, but this was Jericho trying to break out into becoming a main event player, break out of that cruiserweight division that he was in. So I will say 2000 is my favorite year, but a very close second is 1998, just because of how ridiculous Chris Jericho was. Number one dream match of all time, Sting and Undertaker. Obviously, I think, again, I've always wanted to see that match ever since I was a fan of the Sting, and the first time I saw Sting. The first time I was a fan of Sting, and the first time I saw a Dead Man Undertaker, I thought, perfect match right there, because the two characters are so similar, and again, they both make it work. Stature-wise, they're very different, but again, both great workers, so they would definitely, work well together. And again, it doesn't even matter what the match is. People are going to be invested in it just because it's Undertaker and Sting. And I'm not the only one who wants that dream match. A lot of people do. WWE even recognized it. Alright, next question. Goldberg versus Stone Cold in 1998. Who goes over? Now, I'm not sure what the... again, I'm not good with... I don't know how I am with, booking decisions. Because, again, I'm not a booker. And I never worked a day as a wrestling booker, so don't go by what I say, but Goldberg versus Stone Cold Steve Austin in 1998, I'm going to say Goldberg goes over. At this point, Goldberg is still undefeated. He would not lose until um, Starrcade 1998. So let's just say we're in mid 1998 here. Goldberg should beat Stone Cold Steve Austin because Goldberg was starting to beat some names, but think about it. You have the hottest commodity in WCW going against the hottest commodity in WWF. I think I would have Goldberg go over just because Goldberg's still undefeated. So why not have him beat the top face of the company? Sure, in 1998 he beat Hogan, but he would eventually lose to Nash. But again, I think him beating the top face of the WWF would be a whole, like, it would skyrocket him as, like, set in stone him as the guy, the top guy in both companies. Like, the undisputed champion of the Monday Night Wars was Goldberg. He was the big breakthrough star. That's what it would do if Goldberg beat Stone Cold Steve Austin. Could Stone Cold have won? Yeah, sure. That would have been fine for his career, too, because he was the one to slay the almighty Goldberg, who had not been defeated yet. But I would have put Goldberg over, as even WWF's top guy, Stone Cold Steve Austin, can't beat him. So that's what I would do. Again, 1998, I was a year old, so, I'm not 100% sure if my logic is valid, but, whatever. Ultimate Warrior versus Sting in 1990. Who goes over? Sting. Ultimate Warrior and Sting, the Surfer Sting gimmick and Ultimate Warrior are kind of similar in their own fashion, but what if Sting took the Ultimate Warrior's place? Like, what if Sting was facing Hogan at WrestleMania 6? What if Sting returned at WrestleMania 8? The difference between Ultimate Warrior and Sting is a much better worker than Warrior. I mean, sure, Warrior's had some good matches, but come on, Sting is much better. And if Sting were in... Sting is exactly what WWF wanted. Sting, he isn't the tallest... He isn't, super heavyweight, 7 feet tall, but he's, good size. He's like 6'3", 260. So he's a good size for what the WWF wanted at the time. So he could have become what Ultimate Warrior was in WWE. He was really, he was exactly what they wanted, just a clean-cut babyface who was there to, electrify the crowd. And Sting was great, his in-ring work when he was Surfer Sting was really, really good, and his charisma was undeniable. Sting was incredibly good, and he was great as a face. Sting as a heel never really seemed to work. Sting as a face is what Sting was meant to do. So Sting could have been the face of WWE next to, Hulk Hogan and stuff like that. He could have been what Ultimate Warrior was. So, Ultimate Warrior versus Sting, I would definitely put Sting over, and I think, he should have been, the breakout star. Ultimate Warrior, sure, he was cool, but, it was all, I think Sting would have been much better fit than Ultimate Warrior. If it was up to you, how would you have booked Rock vs. Austin ending at WrestleMania 17? Honestly, I don't know, because part of me just wants to say, to get rid of the heel turn part. Just completely just destroy that. Forget that, erase that from your memory, and just have Austin beat Rock clean. That's really all I can think of, because I really, again, I'm not a booker, so, I'm not going to think of this elaborate thing, because it probably would have not have made any sense. I know this is a cop-out answer, but I would have just had Austin beat Rock clean in the middle of the ring, move on with your life. You could have still done the invasion angle, but don't turn Austin heel, because, again, that didn't work out. He did have some good matches during the heel run, but Austin turning heel really wasn't the best decision. It was a weird swerve at the end of WrestleMania 17, but to be fair, it did end the Attitude Era in a big swerve way. But I think I would have just had Austin beat Rock clean and have that be the end of wrestling's most treasured era of all time by the internet fans. But whatever. Last question from him is your thoughts on the American Badass character. I thought it was a great reinvention of The Undertaker, because eventually, Undertaker over the years has been great with, reinventing his character. You had the Western Mortician, then you had the Dead Man, and then by 1999 you had the Prince of Darkness, or the Lord of Darkness. What am I talking about? It's not Ozzy Osbourne. The Lord of Darkness. So he basically has been playing off this Dead Man gimmick basically for a couple of years. And I think he realized, and this is what a lot of great wrestlers realize, is eventually their characters become stale. And I'm not saying Lord of Darkness was stale per se, I'm just saying I think Undertaker was realizing that he was kind of riding off of the same character for so long. And they need to reinvent himself, even if it is for the time being. Just reinvent yourself, and that's what Undertaker did. He became American Badass. It's like, you know, Surfer Sting to Crow Sting, just in reverse. Like Undertaker went from this dark figure who is, has these like mind-bending superpowers and all that. Like you thought Undertaker had these supernatural powers in him, and you thought he was the Lord of Darkness, and he just became this biker badass. That's basically what he was, and it worked well. It didn't hurt his, in-ring work. It just helped him all together to reinvent himself and get himself over once again. So ultimately, Undertaker's American Badass character was great. Should it have lasted longer? Probably not. I think it ran its course, and then he transitioned well from American Badass to Big Evil when he turned heel back in 2002. So I was really alive. Like, well, I shouldn't say alive. I was a fan for Big Evil. That's when I really got introduced to The Undertaker. When I started watching wrestling, The Undertaker was Big Evil. So I didn't really know about the Dead Man. So that's who I thought The Undertaker was. So I thought the American Badass, and I'm just going to include Big Evil in there, was really, really good. I thought it was a great, reinvention. Because that's what you need to do. Like, again, I'm surprised Jericholic8704 is mentioning this, but take a look at Chris Jericho. He left as Y2J. He came back and he was doing the same old thing, and then he realized he needed to reinvent himself, so he became the best in the world. He became serious, and that's reinventing yourself. He realized the Y2J character wasn't working anymore. Times had changed, and you gotta change with the times. And that's what Undertaker did. He became someone new, and that's what you need to do from time to time. He went back to the Dead Man, and he was still well received, and he's not going back, but again, American Badass, great, great reinvention. These next set of questions come from Rated R Superstar 75. His first question is, who is the best current superstar who hasn't faced The Undertaker at WrestleMania? The answer is obvious for me. I have to say John Cena. I think Cena's been a big candidate to face The Undertaker since probably WrestleMania 27. What can you say? Like, this is the perfect opponent for The Undertaker. Why not have this match at WrestleMania 30? It could be an ideal main event. I think it would work. It could work as a main event because, let's face it, the names that are being worthy enough to face Undertaker are becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. And sure, you can put a young guy in there against Taker, but I think WWE really wants to put top guys against Taker. And you could have Daniel Bryan, but I think John Cena is the number one choice for The Undertaker, and I think it would be a great fit for WrestleMania 30. The match, quality-wise, will probably be really, really good, because, Cena, if put with the right guy, can put on a quality match, and The Undertaker is The Undertaker. I think it would be best if they had a gimmick match. I think that would help them both, because while Cena is a decent wrestler, he's not that great of an in-ring general, and Undertaker is getting up there with age, so if they can use weapons, get out of the ring, they can do more inventive stuff, and an I Quit match, again, is ideal, mainly because it would be Cena's motto of never give up would really come to a test here. Like, will you give up to the Phenom? Will you give up to the person who has never been beaten at WrestleMania? And can you imagine if John Cena actually beat The Undertaker? The internet would explode. Like, I would turn on my computer and then it would explode, just because that's going to be how huge this would be. If they did go with Cena to end the streak, I'd have mixed feelings, but at least Cena ended it, and not some, Joe Schmo, some guy that, will maybe leave WWE in a year. At least it's one of the people that WWE has built up as their top guy. His next question is the best legend who hasn't faced The Undertaker. I know this may be cheating a little bit, but I think it's another obvious answer. Sting. Sting, without a doubt. That has been a dream match for years, and even when WWE.com made that top 10 dream matches thing, number one was not number one. I think it was number 3. Yeah, number 3 was Sting and Undertaker. They even recognized that this match was great. And hell, 221-11. Do you guys remember that? I was immediately sucked into that because I wanted Sting to come so badly, and it would be perfect. Sting could go to WWE, get a Hall of Fame spot, have a match with Taker. That could have been it. Maybe he wanted to do some other post WrestleMania stuff, but if he signed like a 4-month deal with WWE, I would have been fine with it, just because it's a dream match. And again, if they did this at WrestleMania 30, I'd be fine with that too, because again, it's more quality-wise, yeah, it will be good, but the sheer spectacle of it would be great. It would be awesome. I can't explain it enough. It's just two very similar characters, and I'm not the only one who thinks this. Everyone wants it, and I think it would be a great moment. Like, you can, again, match quality wise, it could be good because both guys are good. Both guys are great in the ring, and it would be a great match. So I don't see what's holding Sting back. Maybe he just wants to retire as someone who never worked for Vince McMahon, and I'd respect him for that. But yeah, that's my number one choice. His next question is the most underrated match ever. I think this match is mostly underrated by today's fans, because back then this was the greatest match to have ever happened. Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. Now, this is not your 5-star technical classic, as most people would say, but this match was effing huge. This match was incredibly huge. Andre the Giant, the undefeated monstrosity, Andre the Giant, was taking on the immortal fan favorite Hulk Hogan. And it was like Hulk Hogan's never faced someone like this. He faced Bundy in the cage match. That seemed like a big task, but no one like Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant was one of the biggest, most well-known professional wrestlers ever. Even today, he's still well-known. So this match was absolutely huge. And sure, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance behind it, but if you want to get deep down into quality, it's not that bad. It's good, actually. I like the match a lot, and it gave birth to probably the most monumental, most iconic, most immortal, for lack of a better word, moment, and that's when Hulk Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant. Don't tell me you didn't mark out when you first saw that, because everyone did. And of course, I wasn't even alive for this match. This match took place 10 years before I was born. So, I still, get an adrenaline rush whenever Hogan body slams Andre, just because it's just that huge of a moment. So, yeah, I think, pomp and circumstance, people usually respect it for the impact it had, but quality-wise, everything's there that you could want. It's not great by any means, but it's good. Most overrated match ever. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I think the most overrated match ever is Rock and Hogan from WrestleMania 18. Now, I know this is kind of similar to Andre and Hogan, but here's the thing that separated it from me. Hogan and Andre had excellent build-up, a lot of hype, good match. Hogan and Rock is great build-up, great hype, not that great of a match. Again, I know quality of matches doesn't mean everything all the time. Only in some circumstances is match quality supposed to be the most important part, but I mean, if you take away the hype, and I know that's extremely hard to do because this match is built around on the hype of two of the biggest stars going at it, and it was a dream match, but the match isn't all that great, and I find it boring. That's the difference between Andre and Hogan Rock for me, is I can't get into the match at WrestleMania 18. I gave it a flat-out 2 stars, and that was basically for the hype and build-up to it, and it was great. But a crowd can make a match better, but the wrestlers have to entertain me, and they didn't. The match, I remember watching it for the first time, and I thought, because it was such a huge match, and I just thought, wow, they really didn't do anything. It was okay at the most, but I see a lot of people put this over Hogan and Andre, and I don't see how they can do it, both build up wise and match quality wise. Hogan and Andre is better than Rock and Hogan. If you like Rock and Hogan, more power to you. And I know I may seem like a hypocrite by saying that, by saying Hogan and Andre is better than Hogan and Rock, but I like Hogan and Andre just better. And again, it's just my personal opinion. I think the match is better, and I can stay entertained throughout the entire match. I really get bored halfway through Rock and Hogan. It's cool to hear the crowd go nuts, but there was nothing else there. His next question is, what is the best Royal Rumble match? Obvious choice is obvious. Royal Rumble 1992. You had so many big names thrown in there. Flair, Hogan, Slaughter, Sid Justice, just to name a few. You had rising stars like Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in there. Absolutely awesome match. Bobby Heenan was probably the best Bobby Heenan could ever be in this match. He was absolutely hilarious. So much great action, so many memorable moments, and Flair winning was just a great moment altogether. The only match that I think can like barely come up to it, and it was a close call, but Royal Rumble 2004 is also a personal favorite of mine. In my opinion, it's the second best Rumble. I like that Rumble a lot, but I think I have to give the nod to 1992 just on how great it really was. Then he has the worst Royal Rumble ever, and for that one, it's going to be a little hard for me to think, but it's between 95 and 99, but I have to give the nod to 95 just because I thought that Rumble was just terrible. Like, it was really short, like 38 minutes, and at least, like, with 1999, there were some, like, I like the moment with Kane coming in and clearing house and then just eliminating himself. That was the only thing that put 99 over 95 for me. But 95 was just stupid. I didn't like it. It was cool to see Shawn Michaels win with that cool finish, with one foot touching the floor. But I think that Rumble was really bad and it was really boring. And again, it was only like 38 minutes, so that's weird for a 30-man Rumble. Then he asked, what is the best Money in the Bank ladder match? Again, easy choice. WrestleMania 21, Chris Jericho versus Chris Benoit versus Christian versus Shelton Benjamin versus Edge versus Kane. The reason why I put this match over all of them is because this is the only Money in the Bank that I can remember where we actually got a sense of storytelling. And it was with Benoit selling the arm the entire time. And at the end, like, you really felt sympathy for Chris Benoit because he was climbing. He had won the match. He had busted himself open with those stitches that were on his forehead. Gave a headbutt to Kane, and then he just bled. And he was climbing with one arm, and you felt bad for him because it was like he's one arm, but he's going to win this thing. And that's when Edge hit him with the chair. And in my opinion, that was the birth of the Ultimate Opportunist. It wasn't the cash-in. That was like the set in stone. But that's when Edge started to become that sneaky, opportune guy who would just take advantage of any opportunity he got. That was like the precursor to the Ultimate Opportunist. That's what Edge would soon become. So I think it was great character development in Edge and Benoit. And Benoit gave it a sense of story. And don't forget all the great action that was there. Like Shelton Benjamin, like the T-bone suplex off the ladder and running up the ladder for the clothesline on Jericho. You had a lot of other great spots there. So, and of course, it's the first one. So we had never really seen anything like that before. So I will have to give the nod to WrestleMania 21. And then he said the worst Money in the Bank ladder match. Again, I think this one's obvious. The one from Money in the Bank 2012, Jericho, Big Show, Kane, Cena, and Miz. It was okay. They didn't really do anything exciting. I thought the finish was kind of anticlimactic. Like, not the fact that Cena won, but just how he won it and how he grabbed the briefcase. I thought was kind of weird. And again, Cena's cash-in really didn't lead to anything. They just cashed in on the 1,000th episode of Raw, but it really wasn't anything spectacular. It really didn't like change the face of the Money in the Bank ladder match. It was just there. I thought that was the worst. And then he said the best Money in the Bank participant. I have to give the nod to Shelton Benjamin, just because in the early ones he did so much crazy things, like so many crazy stuff. The T-bone off the ladder, the running up the ladder and clotheslining Jericho. Then you had him going through the ladder at WrestleMania 24. He did a senton off the ladder at WrestleMania 25. Just crazy stuff from him. He really was dedicated. And I know some people say he should have won a Money in the Bank ladder match, but nah, I think he was there just to put on good matches and do crazy stuff in the WrestleMania Money in the Bank ladder matches. So yes, in my opinion, the best performer. I think other close seconds could be like maybe CM Punk, Edge, Jeff Hardy, maybe people like those. But Jeff Hardy really wasn't in any. He was just remembered for that one spot. So maybe not him, but a couple close seconds. But I think you got to give the nod to Benjamin. Power Spy in One Games asks, what is the worst WWE pay-per-view in your opinion? There are a handful of pay-per-views you can select as the worst. Some people like to say ECW December to Dismember 2006. I, for one, think that pay-per-view was absolutely atrocious, but I'm not going to say that's the worst pay-per-view ever. Mainly because, even though it was crap, had the worst chamber match ever. The opener was good, with Eminem and the Hardys. That was a good match, and the chamber match was, while the worst one ever, is okay, just nothing great. Anything good, really. The thing that makes the worst pay-per-view ever is it has to be a big pay-per-view. And that's why I think WrestleMania 11 is the worst pay-per-view of all time. Mainly because it's the worst WrestleMania ever, but think about it. WrestleMania is your big event. That's what is supposed to define the year. Like, WrestleMania is the place. That's the pay-per-view that you pull out all the stops to make awesome. And WrestleMania 11 was terrible. Like, again, I wasn't even alive when this WrestleMania took place. I can't imagine what it would be like for someone who was growing up in the mid to late 90s and had to witness this for themselves. Like, you think times now are bad. I can't imagine what it was like in 1995 having to deal with all the bullcrap going on in WWE. And sure, Shawn Michaels Diesel, it was a good title match, nothing fantastic. And LT did a good job. And Bam Bam really helped him along. So they did pull out, like, a decent main event, but everything else was just stupid. There were stupid matches. It was just totally underwhelming. And you could say WrestleMania 9's the worst, and in my reviews for both, I gave each the same rating. But the thing that makes WrestleMania 9 better is at least that one felt like a WrestleMania. Like, they had the Roman Coliseum theme, and, everyone was coming out in togas and in costume. It was cool. It looked cool, at least. And you got, like, sucked into that feeling. Like, you felt like this was a Roman Coliseum that you were in, even though you were just in Las Vegas. WrestleMania 11 was just in Hartford Civic Center, and nothing against Hartford, Connecticut. It was dull. There was nothing special about it. The stage was boring. I mean, sure, you had some celebrities. You had LT in the main event. You had Jenny McCarthy and Pamela Anderson escort Shawn Michaels and Diesel to the ring, but I mean, what'd you have? Like, it felt so flat. There really wasn't anything there. It was pretty underwhelming to me. Anyway, that's what I think is the worst pay-per-view ever, and there are some that are worse than that. I mean, WWE-wise, that's the worst, but worst ever, Heroes of Wrestling, without a doubt. RLW2686 asks, what are your favorite Raw and SmackDown matches? Well, for SmackDown, no-brainer there. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Chris Benoit from 2001. Say what you will about Stone Cold's heel run. He had some great matches during it, and this was one of them. Absolutely awesome match. Another great match that people always talk about is Eddie Guerrero and Edge in their no DQ match. And you had the awesome, awesome finish with Edge giving Eddie Guerrero the execution off the top of the ladder. It was totally awesome. Some other great matches. SmackDown really has, like, set in stone, like, its best matches. Another one would probably be TLC 3. Basically the same as TLC 1 and 2, except you had Benoit and Jericho thrown in the mix, and they actually won that match. Raw, you also have some great matches, like, the London Marathon match with John Cena and Shawn Michaels. Most people consider that the best Raw match ever. However, I consider the best Raw match ever to be Owen and Bulldog from 1997. You had Shawn Michaels and Triple H in, like, the last Raw of 2003 for the world title. That was a great match. Benoit and Jericho versus Steve Austin and Triple H, where Triple H tears his quad for the first time. That was also a really, really, really awesome tag team match. But 2013, say what you will, has given us a lot of great Raw matches. RVD and Chris Jericho had an amazing Raw match. CM Punk and John Cena arguably had the best match in Raw history. In my opinion, it's number 2 of the best Raw matches ever, only behind Owen and Bulldog. Absolutely fantastic match. And there's Undertaker and Team Hell No versus The Shield. Ever since The Shield came on board, they've been producing some great, great matches on Raw. Don't forget Daniel Bryan and Antonio Cesaro from about, like, a month ago. And Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton. Like, seriously, you could make a top 10 matches of Raw for 2013 and still have great matches missing. This year has been absolutely awesome for TV matches and just pay-per-view quality in general. Match quality has been great this year. Storyline-wise, iffy at times, but I think match quality-wise, this year has just been flat-out awesome. Wrestling Machine asked the following questions. Number 1, why do you think WWE went PG? Well, a lot of people say a lot of reasons. There are 3 specific reasons I think are the reasons why WWE went PG. Number 1 is just, I think Vince McMahon has always wanted a family-friendly company. The Attitude Era, at least from what I've heard, again, I am not a behind the scenes person in WWE. I've never worked for WWE in a day in my life. So what I'm talking about is solely on what I've heard. So I'm not claiming to know anything. But to me, and what it seems to a lot of people, is the Attitude Era was something Vince McMahon did is because he was getting his ass kicked by WCW and needed something to gain viewers back. So he changed the face of wrestling, so to speak. Good guys and bad guys were no more. Everyone was just themselves. Everyone was in this area of gray. There were no heels and baby faces. You cheered who you wanted to cheer and boo who you wanted to boo. And the business was exposed, so to speak, and people became more aware of wrestling. And this was the cool period to like wrestling. And I was barely alive for most of the Attitude Era. So, again, I'm not hating on the Attitude Era, but that's just, I think it's just a one-time thing. Probably will never happen again as far as Vince McMahon is in charge. I think he's always wanted a family-friendly company. And, like, think of a guy like Bret Hart and John Cena, who at one point were the face of WWE. They were, I mean, at the time, good guys, clean cut. They played by the rules. They were guys who stood up for what was right. They were the face of the company. They were the role models of the company. And then everything changed. And change is necessary in wrestling and anything. So I think that's just one of the reasons that Vince McMahon has always wanted a family-friendly company. Two, I think, what I've heard, again, I'm not 100% sure on this, but people say that they changed to give Linda McMahon a better reputation in her political career, which makes sense, but, I mean, I don't see why. I mean, again, I'm not a politician either, so I don't see why this would be such a big deal if they see like where Linda McMahon worked. She was the COO of one of the biggest companies in the world, so I don't see how that's an issue. I guess they're just trying to clean up their act just so it doesn't seem like maybe trashy or, violent or, just full of sex and drugs and alcohol. I don't even know. Even though wrestling was never like that, in my opinion. It was just a different time period. So I think they're just trying to make her seem, more presentable, which makes sense, but I don't see why it would be such a big deal. It's not like she was ever doing anything stupid in wrestling. So, you know, whatever. And then I think the last reason is just to usher in a new audience. At the end of the day, WWE is a wrestling promotion, sure, but it's a business, and you need to make money. And with, people streaming pay-per-views, people doing all this stuff to try to get around the money, they need to usher in a new audience of fans. And with this new PG setting with John Cena as the role model, a lot of little kids are drawn to John Cena. And rightfully so. John Cena, again, kind of like Bret Hart, is just the clean-cut good guy who will stand up for what is right. And kids are going to be drawn to that. And he's ushering in a new audience. And soon, those kids will grow up. And maybe we'll get a more mature WWE later down the road, and this cycle may just rinse and repeat. That's it, again, it's a business. Sure, it's a wrestling company, and we want to see great wrestling matches, and we want to see entertaining TV, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and you have to do what's right for business. A lot of people think they can run WWE, but I have a feeling they'll realize that, they'll just be sitting there and like, oh shit, I gotta make some money. Because, sure, you gotta push wrestling, but you also gotta push the people who you think are the most marketable. And if you're not going to sell tickets, you're not in the main event. So, again, it's just a business. They have to usher in new audiences. If they kept it mature, I'm sure more kids will get into it. That didn't stop any kids from getting into it. But and again, women are also getting more and more into wrestling. Because not only children are a rising demographic, women is a rising demographic too. So it's not just male 18 to 34, it's everyone. And is that a good thing? Yes, it's a good thing. Has it created some bad moments? Yes, it has. I know some people are thinking like, oh, PG gimmicks, like people like to point out like Tons of Funk as a PG gimmick, but in my opinion, that's just a comedic gimmick. what's the problem with a little fun in wrestling? It doesn't always have to be about blood and guts and seriousness. Sure, that's fun from time to time, and sure, the primary focus should be wrestling, but to have a fun gimmick every now and then, in my opinion, doesn't hurt. You could have Santino come out and do a funny thing for about like 2 minutes, and I would be okay with it, just because you gotta get some fun in there. And I hope that WWE realizes about how different their demographics are. And I'd be fine if they created a balance between, child-friendly fun and, wrestling. I would be fine if they created a mix of that, because that's what they need to do, because they have one fan base that's either going to be happy or unhappy, but in WWE's mind, the kids are more important because they're the ones pouring in the merchandise to buy the new John Cena shirt every, 4 months? So yeah, again, it's a business. As much as we don't want to admit it, it's a business. So I think that's the reason WWE went PG. I'm sorry for a little bit of a tangent, but, whatever. I hate when people say that PG is the problem, because it's not. It's not. I'm pretty sure, like, majority of the Attitude Era, or at least like half of it, WWE was PG. So, SmackDown, I think, I'm 99.9% sure SmackDown had a PG rating constantly. There might have been like a spike where it was TV-14, like a little time frame where it was TV-14, but majority of the time it was PG. And TV-14 really started to become a thing in the post-Attitude Era, around the time in like 2003, 2004. It became PG, I believe, in maybe mid-2008, 2009. I'm pretty sure that's when it started to become PG. But, again, PG is not the issue. It's being, like, overproduced matches, writing staff, maybe just a bunch of different things. But I don't think it's fair to say PG is the 100% issue with WWE. And if they just put a different rating on front of their TV screen, everything would be fine, because that's not true. Let's just say that TV-14 just showed up one day on Raw, and we see one of the worst Raws ever. I bet you any of my money people would praise it because, oh my god, WWE is finally TV-14 again. So, yeah. That's why I think WWE went PG. So, sorry for the little bit of a tangent, but, whatever. His second question is, who will be the next Y2J? Kind of hard to tell. I think, well, when you say Y2J, what I'm assuming you mean is, like, who will have a career similar to him and, like, be a utility veteran like he is now. It's kind of hard to tell, but I'm going to say Daniel Bryan, just because of, like, their similar rise to the top. Bryan, like Jericho, worked in independent promotions, traveled worldwide to wrestle. I think both of them will have a very similar career, similar rise to the top. And I think once Daniel Bryan, I feel like Daniel Bryan will be one of those people who will stay with WWE for a long time. And when he's getting up there in age, when he's around Jericho's age, like 40, I think he'll be still wrestling at the top of his game, producing great matches. But at this time, he's going to be putting over different young guys. So if I had to put money on one, I'd say Daniel Bryan, just because of how similar he is to Chris Jericho. And his attitude, too, Again, I've never worked in WWE a day in my life. I know I'm saying this a lot during this video, but I have not worked with them. But I've never really seen someone say a bad thing about Daniel Bryan, and I've never really seen someone say a bad thing about Chris Jericho, personally. So, I think similar attitude, similar style, similar rise to the top, I think Daniel Bryan is my best bet to be the next Chris Jericho. So, look out for him. Epic Blade 104 asks, can you make videos like a room tour? Well, the thing about it is my room is not very exciting. I mean, if you guys want me to, I can. The problem is my room is like a box. So, I probably won't. I could do like a DVD collection kind of thing if you just want to see that, but like I don't really have like a wrestling decked out room. Like I have like 2 wrestling posters, but that's it. Again, my room is not very exciting. So, I mean, if again, you could see my DVD collection if you want, but that's pretty much it. I really don't have that exciting of a room, so probably not. Only if you guys like desperately want it, or if I just completely redesign my room to make it more wrestling-like, but I really don't have anything too exciting for it, so no, I don't have like memorabilia like titles hanging on the wall. I don't have, autographed pictures and action figures and all that. I really don't have all that stuff in my room. So I have 2 wrestling posters, and that's it. And they're not even that big. So, yeah, probably not. Dylan Loves WWE TV asked, is there a reason for Chris Jericho being your favorite wrestler? Really, no. Not really. He wasn't like the first wrestler I ever saw. That was Sting. So that theory's out the window. The thing about Chris Jericho was, it just, especially for just me, is I just thought he was really, really cool. Like, his entrance was cool, his fireworks was cool, he had the countdown. I thought that was really, really cool. His wrestling gear looked cool. He was just a cool guy. That's what made him my favorite wrestler. Just, I thought he was, he was funny, he was cool to listen to, he was cool to talk to, and like, around the time I got into wrestling, or at least WWE, Jericho was still a heel, and that didn't bother me. But then, like a couple months later, he would turn face, and that's when like I really, really started liking Chris Jericho, because then he was making fun of everyone, he was making fun of the heels. So again, there really isn't a specific reason as to why he's my favorite. Now it's like, I like all of his, his movesets are really, really good. All of his promos, from like today to like the beginning of his like WCW run are extremely, extremely good. All of his matches are good. So there's a lot of reasons now, but when I first got into wrestling, there was really no reason behind it. I just thought he was a cool guy, and I wanted to be like I wanted to be like him because he was just so cool to me. He was like the cool guy in school that you wanted to be like. And then around like when I was in, maybe it was like the summer I was going into 6th grade. That's when he became the best in the world, slow talking, wearing a suit. So all of his cool factor was still there, but like what drew me to him was kind of a way, but it was like an ushering in a new era of cool for Chris Jericho. So, but by then it was set in stone that Jericho was my favorite wrestler by the time I was in 6th grade. So yeah, but that cool void was filled by John Morrison. John Morrison became the new like cool kid in school that I thought was like the coolest guy ever, just by the way he looked. So yes, there really is no specific reason as to why. Well, there wasn't when I first got into it. Chris Jericho was just someone I always really, really liked. But now there is many reasons. Matches, promos, gear, everything about Jericho was cool to me. So there's a bunch of reasons now, but back then, nah, there weren't a lot of reasons. Likers316 asks the following questions. Number 1, would you rather pick Mark Henry or John Cena? I guess just as my favorite. As far as 2011 to 2013 is concerned, Mark Henry, in my opinion, is better than John Cena, at least as a character, just more entertaining in general. I thought, the sexual chocolate thing back in the 90s, like, that was just a silly gimmick and all that stuff. And Mark Henry did have some heel runs back in the day. Like, there was one around, like, 2003, 2004. And that one, again, was pretty underwhelming. And he had another one in about, like, 2006. And that one was kind of underwhelming, too. We ended up getting a WrestleMania match with The Undertaker. Again, both of them were kind of underwhelming to me, but they finally got it right in 2011. They built him up really, really well. He was, taking guys out left and right. He took out Kane, took out the Big Show in a cool match at Money in the Bank. They built him up towards the world title. He had a good match with Sheamus at SummerSlam, and I think he's had a great, it's a shame that he hit his peak so late in his career. And don't forget about the retirement speech he did a couple months ago. That was absolutely awesome. And he totally threw everyone on a swerve. I will not believe one person who thought that he wasn't going to retire. Absolutely great stuff from him. And again, it's a shame that we got him so late. He finally, hit his prime so late. And match quality wise, for him, at least for me, quality of matches doesn't mean everything. He's had some good matches. I like his match with Big Show at Vengeance. That one was pretty good. And I always thought the cage match with him and Big Show and Daniel Bryan was kind of underrated. I think it got tossed aside in the mix, but I thought it was a pretty good match. So I'll pick Mark Henry over John Cena as long as we're talking 2011 to 2013. His second question is, does John Cena suck? No, he doesn't. In my most humble opinion, John Cena does not suck. Far from it. There are wrestlers much, much, much worse than John Cena. I mean, again, I'm in the minority here. I'm well aware of that. There are some people, not even some, there are a lot of people who don't like John Cena, and there's some people who respect him but just don't like him, don't like the character, don't like his in-ring work. Fine with that. There are the other crazy people who, just can't stand the sight of him, want him removed from WWE, the planet. Those people definitely hate him. I don't hate him. I will say though, when I was, probably around like 2009 to like 2011, I was like a massive Cena hater. But what really like turned it around for me was his feud with CM Punk at leading up to Money in the Bank 2011. That's what really kind of like turned me around to being a Cena supporter. Again, Cena isn't my favorite wrestler ever, but I do like him. I think he's cool, and again, like as a person, he's great, and even as a character, like sure it's stale at times, but seeing the stuff John Cena does is pretty exciting. I mean, like when he's in those personal rivalries, like as you saw with Daniel Bryan, The Rock, CM Punk, he will cut great promos. It's like you almost have to light a fire under him, figuratively, to like get a good promo out of him. You gotta like really draw the emotion out of him, and I think a lot of guys can do that. So I think Cena just has to be put in the right position for people to really appreciate him. And again, Cena's very marketable. That's why he's the top guy. So many kids like him. That's why he's going to be the top guy. And, like, the thing about John Cena that makes him so great is just he's like the Bret Hart of this era. He's the model of what WWE wants. A good, clean-cut guy who will say never give up and fight for what's right. That's what WWE wants. Apparently, that's not what other people want. But I always laugh at the fact when people say, like, oh, if I got in charge of WWE, the first thing I would do is fire John Cena. Have fun with losing your, top seller, money-wise. And even, like, his in-ring stuff, he's had some great matches. And again, it has to, like, his promos, it has to be with the right guy. His best matches, with greats like CM Punk, Shawn Michaels. And again, even seeing him do those seeing him do a drop kick or a Hurricane Rana is just awesome because even though they look so bad, like his Hurricane Rana he did to CM Punk at the match they had on Raw, like it looks so bad, but I marked out just because it's so awesome to see Cena actually do some wrestling because everyone says he can't wrestle. And again, like I'm pretty sure Cena can wrestle 10 times better than most people who say he can't wrestle, but that's besides the point. So, in my opinion, John Cena doesn't suck. I think he's fine. Sure, he's stale at times, and sure, he's responsible for some bad matches, but the worst ever? Absolutely no. No way. And with that, we are done. So, thank you to everyone who sent in questions. I hope my answer was sufficient enough for you. Again, this is my first audio video ever, so if you guys don't like it, just tell me, hey, maybe this isn't your thing, and I'll go back to what I was doing. If you guys want me to continue it, I'll be happy to do more and more audio videos. It doesn't really matter to me. I know this video is quite lengthy. We clocked in about 1 hour here, so sorry for that, but, just trying to get all my thoughts out there. So, again, thanks for everyone who asked, and I will see you guys later.